Prisoners have been moved from a jail in WA's Great Southern after cells were damaged in a riot last night. The state opposition says overcrowding is to blame. Courtney Bembridge reports.
A group of 20 prisoners barricaded themselves in a unit at Albany Regional Prison and damaged a number of cells. It took more than 8 hours for all of the prisoners to be cleared from the unit. A number of them have now been transferred to Perth. The Department of Corrective Services is investigating what caused the incident.
There will be incidents like this if the system isn't relieved, if there is not better resourcing, if there are not more prison officers and we don't open up the units which are currently closed.
The Prison Officers Union says whilst overcrowding may not have caused this incident, it has contributed to the situation.
Overcrowding makes it more difficult to manage incidents when things like this occur, and overcrowding makes it more likely that incidents like this will occur.
The department says the damage is still being assessed, but it's not believed to be extensive. In a statement, the Corrective Services Minister, Joe Francis, says he's thankful the incident was resolved safely and no one was injured.
Good evening. Riot police and protesters have gone head-to-head in violent clashes outside Villawood Detention Centre. 10 people were injured as demonstrators tried to stop the transfer of 45 refugees to remote facilities in Western Australia.
As the gates to Villawood Detention Centre opened, protesters clashed with police. From late last night, the crowd began to grow as word spread more refugees were to be transported to another facility in remote Western Australia. This morning, more than 100 demonstrators formed a human chain to try and stop the buses leaving.
A lot of these detainees are long-term detainees that have been there for 3 to 4 years. They've got networks in the community that they can support. There's not very good mobile reception there, so that effectively they'd be blocked from communication with their support networks that they have.
As the crowd surged forward, the riot squad held them back.
Get back!
10 protesters injured in the scuffle.
It's incredible the police brutality and abuse that's happening here today at this rally.
3 protesters were arrested, and as tensions boiled over, some turned on the media.
Get the f*** away! Shut up! Get the f*** away! The protesters say their fight won't stop here. They're planning to follow the asylum seekers to the new centre in WA.
One of the men that I know who came from Iraq and has been a victim of torture was sitting at the front of the bus handcuffed. So we came today because we want them to know we love them, we want to wave goodbye to them so they know that we'll follow them to the end.
The detainees, most from Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iran and Iraq, were transported to Sydney Airport. There, they were marched one by one onto a government jet. In a statement, the Immigration Department said the detainees are being transferred to enable refurbishment to be completed. But whether they'll return to Villawood is yet to be decided.
Free the refugees!
Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Anti-nuclear protesters and riot police clash on the streets of Taipei. Thousands of demonstrators have blocked a main transport route in the city. They want the authorities to stop the construction of Taiwan's 4th nuclear plant. Police used water cannons to try to dislodge some of the protesters. Others were forcibly removed.
2 people who are believed to be injured were taken to the site for medical treatment. It seems that the police had to do their jobs, but sometimes maybe they go too far in enforcing the law.
Right now, anti-nuclear public opinion is actually very high. The government should respond to the public wishes as soon as possible.
On Sunday, the government agreed to a temporary suspension of work on the plant, which is around 40 kilometres from the capital. But authorities say that halting the project permanently could lead to electricity shortages. The protesters fear a repeat of Japan's Fukushima nuclear disaster and have vowed to continue their demonstrations. Miranda Hurst, BBC News.
We're just outside the gates of one of the world's largest shoe factories. It assembles sneakers for some of the world's top global brands. But inside the factory gates, the machines are quiet. That's because the workers are all outside here with us. For days, they've been protesting, demanding unpaid Social Security benefits. And they're absolutely furious. They say they will not leave this site until the government and the company pay them the benefits they say they deserve.
Our goal is for them to pay us the 11% social security benefits the law requires. We also want them to compensate us for unpaid benefits and overtime.
Strikers marched through the streets shouting their demands on Monday until they clashed with restless riot police. Dozens of workers were injured, some seriously. This woman is begging for donations to pay her husband's hospital bills. He was so badly wounded in Monday's protest that he can't speak, she cried. Still, the violence has done little to scare away the workers.
Until they give us compensation, we won't leave. If we have to die here, we will.
Yu Yuan, the shoe manufacturer, is offering to pay full benefits by 2015. But the workers say that's not enough to end the strike. As long as they stand outside the factory gates, the police will wait here too. Celia Hatton, BBC News, Dongguan.
The scene you're about to see takes place in Gangnan in eastern China. A man was taking photographs of the Chengguan, who are local police officers. When he refused to stop, the officers attacked him, but bystanders quickly came to his rescue and nearly beat the Chengguan to death. Now, according to our observer Lu Haitao, the Chengguan are known for their brutality, and this was just the last straw.
A man snapped some photos of Sheguan policemen as they were violently dislodging a street vendor. They got in an argument and the police hit this man. Many people were watching the scene. A rumor then circulated on the internet saying that the man had died. Local residents got together and surrounded the Sheguan. They started hitting the officers. Some of the Sheguan tried to take refuge in a van, but the crowd attacked the vehicle. They were finally put into an ambulance, but it too was attacked. More police arrived on the scene and managed to disperse the crowd. Some of the officers were in a critical state after losing a lot of blood. The Sheguan are police officers that work in urban areas. They have a very bad reputation because they always use violence. They confiscate everything that street vendors own, which ruins their lives. People really hate them. There's not much you can do against the Sheguan. They do whatever they want and they have very little supervision. The justice system in China is not independent, so regular citizens have no recourse. I hope this unfortunate incident will at least get the Sheguan to change their attitude towards the people they are supposed to serve. The Sheguan in Canyon may have stopped that man from taking pictures, but in the end, they failed since other people filmed everything.
Getting to the summit of Mount Everest is still one of the toughest physical challenges known to man. But many don't do it alone. They need the help of Nepalese guides or Sherpas. They help show the way and carry supplies. It puts them constantly at risk. Friday's avalanche struck while the Sherpas were trying to make the way safe for international climbers. 13 were killed and 3 more are unaccounted for.
It's a terrible tragedy, great loss of life, and of course the families and villages that will be hugely impacted by this loss.
The guides are now refusing to go up the mountain until certain demands are met. They want a bigger insurance payout for those killed, more financial aid for the victims' families, and new regulations to ensure the guides' rights. Nepal's government said it will meet some of those demands, but for the Sherpas it doesn't go far enough.
We decided to establish a Himalayan rehabilitation fund to assist the victims' children with food, education, etc., and with rehabilitating those injured and disabled.
The government makes more than $3 million a year through Everest climbing fees alone. The Sherpas themselves make a very small fraction of that, up to $6,000 a year. But for them and their community, mountaineering is a key source of income. The son of Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man ever to reach the top of Mount Everest, and who's been to the top of the mountain twice himself, says it's a difficult choice to make.
But what are the options? Well, unfortunately, the only options when you play Russian roulette ascending a place like the Khumbu Icefall is to find alternatives, and that may affect the employment of local people. It's a tough situation.
Until there's a way to make climbing Everest safer, A 60-year history of reaching the world's highest peak hangs in the balance. Erica Wood, Al Jazeera.
बात कानून की पासदारी की थी, लेकिन कानून के रखवालों को नागवार गुजरी। जिला कचहरी कोयटा में एडवोकेट कासिम को मखसूस रास्ते से दाखिल होने को कहा गया तो एडवोकेट पुलिस एहलकारों से उलझ पड़ा। हाथापाई हुई, वकला बरादरी मुश्तइल हो गई। गुस्से में बिखरे बेकाबू वकला ने पुलिस एहलकारों को बदतरीन तशद्दुद का निशाना बनाना शुरू कर दिया। बावर्दी पुलिस एहलकार को जमीन पर घसीटते रहे। एक नाराज वकील तो पुलिस मोबाइल पर घूंसे और लाते मारकर गम हल्का करता रहा। पुलिस की इजाफी नफरी पहुंची, मुज़ाकरात की कोशिश की, लेकिन वकला जिद पर अड़े रहे। वकला गर्दी 15 मिनट तक जारी रही। पुलिस ने मुश्तइल वकला को मुंतशिर करने के लिए हवाई फायरिंग की। मुज़ाकरात के बाद वकला मुंतशिर हो गए।
The Syrian refugees in Jordan's Zaatari camp escaped violence in one country and now they find it in another. Camp residents fought against the Jordanian police. The damage is clear. One report says that riots began after a 4-year-old refugee was run over by a Jordanian vehicle. Other refugees tell a different story.
Our story is as follows. A woman was trying to come into the camp, but the Jordanian police forces arrested her. People wanted to get her out, but they were attacked, and the police followed the men inside the camp. So we all came in to help the men, and over 300 police and gendarmerie forces attacked us.
The gendarmerie opened fire. I've seen them with my own eyes. More than 50 attacked us. Why are they attacking us? We've escaped from Bashar Assad. Why are they treating us this way?
Jordan's authorities called a news conference and insisted that they acted in self-defense.
Around 5,000 refugees attacked the gendarmerie around the camp, which leads the gendarmerie to use tear gas for the riot. Some of the refugees, they used the gas bottles against our officers.
Jordan hosts more than 500,000 Syrian refugees. They have little immediate prospect of going home. Now, even their place of refuge offers uncertain relief. James Reynolds, BBC News, Istanbul.
In other news, police in the Italian capital clashed with people protesting forced evictions from the city council property there. Several people were injured as police used batons to break through a large group of protesters in Rome. The protesters, who included ordinary citizens and immigrants, had barricaded themselves inside the building and had taken to the roof. Over 100 officers entered the building and forced the residents out. Rome's city council says around 90 properties in the capital are being occupied by these people. This is while some 50,000 units are estimated to be empty in the city. Many families are struggling to find decent lodging amid record-high unemployment in Italy.
This was the heart of Rome on Saturday. One of the trendiest streets of the Italian capital became the scene of some of the most violent clashes seen in months. This was the biggest demonstration against Renzi's government 2 months after he became prime minister. It started as a street party. It ended in urban warfare.
And there seems to be some kind of violence that is erupting. I don't know if you can see there's a lot of stuff that is being thrown at the police, and there's some paper bombs now exploding right next to the police cordons. Well, now this is exactly what authorities thought would happen here, just right next to the labor ministry. They knew that this could happen, and it is happening right now.
Most of them protested against issues Renzi inherited from previous governments, like a high-speed rail link planned in northern Italy, and in favor of housing rights.
If politics does not provide answers, people become desperate, and that is why we will continue fighting every day.
But many also opposed Renzi's labor market reforms. The Prime Minister made it easier for employers to hire, but also to fire employees. So far, Italians seem to have been cautiously optimistic about Renzi's proposed tax cuts and public spending review. But 2 months in the job, he has faced the anger of those who oppose his drive for reforms. Claudio Lavanga, Al Jazeera, Rome.
Today is the second day of my protest against my water meter being installed. I'm making a stand against what they're doing. I don't believe in what they're doing. You know, I have a list of questions that I want answered by Irish Water. I've tried ringing their phone and I've no answer. I want to know why we're being made pay the water charges when they brought it in as a tax to bail out the banks, which is so wrong. It would be nice to get more of the neighbours out, but I think a lot of people in Raheny think that they can't. Whereas, you know, I've had enough. You know, my family, we live on very little, and I don't see how I'm going to afford to pay another tax. I'm prepared to take this all the way. If they feel they need to arrest me, then so be it. I have friends and family that will help with my children. I'm a good mother. I want to provide for them. The way this government is screwing everybody into the ground, I'm finding that more and more difficult. I've had enough.
Have a nice day. Bye. Have a nice day.
La population rejette cette sélection de fond et de forme. Ce n'est pas une élection. Ce n'est pas une élection. C'est une mascarade. J'ai joué à l'avance. Je ne sais pas comment parler de la souveraineté populaire, or que les jeux, comme on appelle les dés, sont jetés déjà à l'avance.
Avec personne, on est avec personne, ni avec Bouteflika, ni avec Benflesh. On est marre de ce système, et on a marre de ce pouvoir, et on a marre de tout ici en Algérie.
Delayed payments for workers at Lusaka City Market has led to suspended workforce and closure of essential facilities at the market, including toilets. The workers are pointing accusing fingers of pilfering of public funds on the market management. The workers, mostly cleaners, have vowed not to go back to work until their 3-month salary arrears are paid to them.
The problem is when we come to ask the management to say, why are you not getting paid? They're saying, drama, and yet the buses they've included from 20 quarter to 25, on which this and drama. So all we were interested in is our money. We want our money.
If they're not going to pay us 2 months, we want to remove this garbage. This garbage will remain until the day that they're going to pay us 3 months. That's when we will remove this thing.
Following the locking of toilets, marketeers and clients at the market have to find alternative places to answer the call of nature.
The toilet also. Where are we going to do toilets? They have crossed today. No toilets.
But Lusaka Mayor Daniel Chisenga has pleaded with the workers to resume work as their plight is being addressed. He further attributes the delay in paying salaries to bloated expenditure from 20,000 to 90,000 per month. This was after the local authority terminated the contract with the cleaning firm in preference to employing more youths in order to create jobs.
We are focused on creating employment for them, and in an event like this, we are very sympathetic to the situation, but plead that they go back for work and give us a bit of time, not much time. They should be able to get their full salaries in due course.
Pauline Ngozo, Movie TV News, Lusaka.
It appeared as if the worst of the violence had passed, and the remaining small groups of protesters were fueled more by liquor than last week's anger.
Despite the relative calm, the tension in the township is still palpable. Damage caused by the past week's protests is impossible to miss. Hundreds of thousands of rand have gone up in smoke due to what residents call arrogance on the part of elected officials.
This place belongs to the councillors. When you're a councillor, you're basically the boss. Residents are not allowed to say anything and the councillors call the shots.
The residents are demanding that the municipal council be dissolved. They torched several houses belonging to municipal officials, but relative peace later descended on the township. That was shattered when the community met with a delegation from the provincial government. The residents had expected the government to announce that municipal officials will be fired, but instead they were promised a forensic audit of the municipality, which would be completed within 6 weeks.
We were just really here to share that information and respond to the issues that they've raised as government. We are quite concerned of the type of violence and the negative engagement that some of the leaders are demonstrating here, and we appeal for much more calmness. We would want to engage further and ensure that we really have been able to resolve this problem collectively.
The violence continued after the meeting. The community torched several cars and has vowed to continue protesting until its demands are met. Ulkutsia, Bloemhof.
Know more about your world.
enca.com.
Holy fuck!
Are those gunshots?
No,
stun grenades.
Clashes and chaos in Rio. Eviction had been expected for days, but this is how it was carried out. Police used tear gas and stun grenades to disperse families. Desperate parents tried to protect their children. Roughly 5,000 people had occupied an abandoned building in northern Rio 10 days ago. Police arrived early with eviction orders and say the clashes started after some squatters started to fight back. Protesters set fire to vehicles and threw rocks at policemen. Officers responded forcefully. An official spokesman said the operation went as planned and followed standard procedures. Several people were injured. Residents here cry out for others to film what's happening while this woman is carried out. The squatters left carrying out their few belongings, with which they had been hoping to build a new home. They accused the police of violence.
The police came in, breaking everything, throwing everyone out. Thank God I had my son in my lap. Nothing happened to us, but I don't know about the others. Why are we here? We lost our home to the floods after a landslide, and we came to try it out to see if we could get a home, because we can't live in other people's houses begging favours.
In just 10 days, occupants had divided the area up into tiny plots and started to build. Some shacks already had illegal power connections. The land belongs to a telecoms company, but had already been dubbed Rio's newest favela. Julia Carneiro, BBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
próximos anos letivos, para que as crianças aí sim elas tenham uma educação de qualidade, porque o verdadeiro crime é você ter essa qualidade de educação que a gente tem hoje no nosso país.
Eles estão tendo uma aula especial, uma luta de cidadania, para que no futuro não sejam manipulados por esse governo covarde, corrupto, e que sejam cidadãos com dignidade, que saibam questionar os seus direitos.
Eu quero brasileiro para saúde e educação, da Copa, da Copa, da Copa eu amo não, para saúde e educação.
What happened this evening is that the body of this 26-year-old man was found, and according to his family, he'd been beaten to death by police who thought he was a member of a drugs gang. Now, police have denied those accusations, but the death brought hundreds of people down from the favela, which is on a hill, onto the city centre streets. It closed, the subsequent protests closed at least 2 main streets in Rio de Janeiro. There were reports that another man has been shot dead tonight by the police. The police have a very bad reputation for going over the top. In Brazil, for example, 5 people a day die at the hands of police. This is one of the most violent societies in the world. And as you say, all of this in the city which is hosting the World Cup final just 2 months before the tournament starts. And it's just the kind of publicity that Brazil could do without at the minute.
Despite ongoing talks, farmers across Colombia are continuing to protest against the government. They say it's failed to enact reforms over debt management and fertilizer pricing, promised after demonstrations last year. In the northeastern town of Socorro, farmers clashed with riot police who used tear gas. Meanwhile, in the capital Bogota, farmers' representatives met with government officials. The agriculture minister said he was happy with the progress of the talks.
The atmosphere is positive and constructive. There is a desire to build confidence between both sides, and we are very motivated.
But the spokesman for the farmers said the strike would not be called off yet.
They always tell us to sign an agreement and to end the strike. But first, we need to see results before we decide our next move.
The farmers claim the government's agricultural policies are driving them bankrupt. They say that free trade agreements with the EU and US are flooding the market with agricultural products at prices that they just cannot match. Idoia Larrañaga, BBC News.
An anti-government march in Haiti has ended in violence as police tried to break up the demonstration. Thousands of people took to the streets of the capital Port-au-Prince to protest against the government's handling of reconstruction funds in the wake of the devastating earthquake that rocked the island in 2010. More than 200,000 people died and over 1 million others were displaced. Around €5 billion of public and private donations were made, but critics say little, if any, has been spent. As protesters moved close to the presidential palace, police reportedly began opening fire and using tear gas to disperse demonstrators.
The New York Police Department is defending a publicity campaign that really is blowing up on Twitter, and not altogether in a good way. So the department encouraged New Yorkers and others to post pictures of its officers with the hashtag MyNYPD. Some of the responses were positive, others not so much. Like this one showing officers holding a man on the hood of a car. It reads, "Free massages from the NYPD. What does your police department offer?" The NYPD says it welcomes the open, uncensored dialogue. The lesson here, live by Twitter, die by Twitter.
Yeah. Mobile phone footage captures the moment a hockey match descends into chaos in New York on Sunday. Brawls are no extraordinary occurrence, but this was no ordinary match. The players are New York City's firefighters and police officers, playing their annual match for charity. The players can be seen locked in brawls, sliding around the rink, which is littered with discarded sticks, gloves and helmets. In one of a number of videos posted by fans online, here fire department supporters can be heard roaring with encouragement. US media reports the brawl broke out when the match became tied 3-3. When tempers were eventually calmed, the New York Police Department went on to win 8-5. Both sides are yet to comment.
It began as a police chase, then led to a riot on Southern Avenue Sunday night. At least 3 people are now under arrest. WLKY's Marissa Alter has developments.
This was the scene Sunday night in the 3000 block of Southern Avenue. Dozens of officers, a mob of people, and arrests made. It began with police trying to pull over this man, Garot Thomas, for expired tags. They say he refused and took off, crashing his car into a telephone pole and then running down Southern Avenue. Police say they warned Thomas to stop, and when he didn't, tased him. The chase ended with a takedown, but police say Thomas didn't surrender easily, fighting, injuring, and threatening officers till the end. Rosalind Maxwell rushed to the scene. She is Thomas's mother.
I really don't know what happened at this site. I got a phone call from his girlfriend saying that the police had beat him up, and they told me where he was.
But she wasn't the only one who showed up. Thomas's arrest led to a crowd of about 50 and more people in handcuffs. This is James Bivens. He's charged with riot and inciting a riot. Police say he and Prescian Mitchell, who was also arrested, encouraged others to create a public disturbance and assault officers. Maxwell's 14-year-old and 17-year-old daughters were taken into custody as well. In Louisville, Marissa Alter, WLKY News.
Thomas, Bivens, and Mitchell were all arraigned this morning. Not guilty pleas were entered for all 3 suspects.
Metro Transit officials suspect a blue flu may have caused dozens of employees to call in sick. The very same day, thousands were headed downtown for the Cardinals' home opener. Metro President John Nation says about 70 operators called in sick this morning. He adds that only about 10 out of the 900 workers in the transit force call in on any given day. However, he stopped short of saying it's a work stoppage. Negotiations between the agency and the union Local 789 have been ongoing for years.
You'd have to ask the union that question. I have to deal with the facts as I have them, and that is we had about 10 times the number of people call in sick that we would normally have, and it just so happens it's opening day for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, Nation says several bus routes in Missouri were running an hour and a half late. He said Illinois bus and Metrolink routes on both sides of the river were unaffected. We called union officials, however, have yet to hear their reaction to the absences. Negotiations continue.
The president's accusations.
Police say 6 protesters have been arrested during a ruckus at a small demonstration in downtown Denver. Sergeant Steve Warnecki says protesters were pepper sprayed as they tried to stop police efforts to make arrests Saturday evening. The Denver Post reports the protest happened on a crowded 16th Street Mall. The small group of about 24 people say they were protesting against organized government and police. The group, called Anonymous, protests on the 5th day of each month. No property damage was reported, and the arrests were for minor charges, including blocking the street and interfering with police.
5 News.
From cow tipping to car tipping, vandals find a new late-night amusement, but not everyone is laughing. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Griego. Frank is on assignment. KPIX5's Ann Makovic joins us with a look at why these small cars are the latest target. Ann?
And from what we understand, at least 4 smart cars have been targeted. I'm here at the Smart dealership in San Francisco, where from what we understand, at least 2 of the damaged cars have been taken. This is what an intact smart car looks like. It's very small and apparently very easy to tip. One smart car was flipped onto its roof in Bernal Heights, another onto its side just a few blocks away, and this smart car was flipped onto its tail in the nearby Portola neighborhood. A neighbor says he saw 8 hooded figures on the street at about 1 a.m.
I thought they looked like they were up to no good, and then sure enough, they walk up to this smart car right here, all huddle around it, and then just lift it up and set it on its hind legs.
The cars weigh only about 1,800 pounds, making them an easy target for tipping.
I think they're a lightning rod for
for criticism and obviously bad intentions.
Andrew Smith owns this car, which now appears to be totaled. He and his wife have only had it for about 6 months.
But in that period of time, we've found a lot of people have very negative feelings about them.
There's even a Facebook page dedicated to the idea of tipping over smart cars. One member saying there's environmentally friendly and then there's just plain stupid, which these cars are. It goes on to say the person, quote, would never actually damage someone's property, but mentally it's fun to picture them on their sides, end quote.
I don't know. I want to say I feel violated, but I don't really care. Having lived in San Francisco for as long as I have, I've come to expect random acts of violence and mayhem.
Now, police don't know the motive in these cases. There is some speculation that this could be some sort of backlash against the gentrification of San Francisco neighborhoods, but it might also just be a stupid prank. Live in San Francisco, Ann Makovic, KPIX 5.
San Francisco is currently home to a growing and intensifying set of protests against the gentrification which is occurring in a number of its neighborhoods, courtesy of high-earning tech industry workers.
Working class people cannot compete with the salaries that are being given in technology.
The latest escalation in these protests has been to target specific people who the protesters blame for the eviction of existing renters to make room for condo conversions or to otherwise renovate the properties and then rent or sell them for higher prices. The two sides in this conflict have a basic disagreement about property rights. The renters and the protesters supporting them believe that signing a lease gives them property rights to remain in that apartment for as long as they choose. While the lease specifies both a rental payment and the length of the lease, the protesters somehow imagine that their rights extend beyond the terms of the lease.
Just one day after an hours-long public comment session at the Albuquerque City Council meeting, vandals left their mark on several police substations. Scrubbing, scraping, and power washing. Not how city workers planned on spending their day. At least 4 Albuquerque police substations were targeted by vandals late Monday night or early Tuesday morning, including the facilities at Central and Rio Grande, Central and Girard, Montgomery and Tramway, and the South Broadway Community Substation. Bright red paint was splattered and sprayed across signs, windows, and sidewalks. Crews spent much of the day cleaning it up, and a group of volunteers from a local car club heard about the mess and decided to help.
Somebody had mentioned too, like, oh, more tax money wasted on cleaning graffiti, so I was like, well, this would be a perfect opportunity to step up, maybe, you know, help out a little bit.
It's unclear who may have been responsible for the graffiti, but it's not the first case we have seen. The police substation in Nob Hill was also tagged last month. After hundreds of people protested the department downtown, these volunteers say no matter who you support, vandalism and violence are not the answer.
It is our community. We all live here. So, like, if the community would just come together a little more often, prevent stuff like this from happening.
There is no word on how much today's vandalism cost the city, but police say the offenders could face felony charges.
It's been a tumultuous few weeks for APD, from the protests to the DOJ report. Now police say someone is making death threats against officers, and those are popping up all across the city on light poles and in the newspaper. News 13's Gabrielle Burkhart is live near UNM campus with that story. Gabby?
Dean, several people who get their newspapers from stands here along Central say they found flyers just like this one stuffed inside of the Albuquerque Journal that say, "Save a life, kill a cop." Albuquerque Journal newsstands have been riddled with propaganda since Friday. People found these flyers which say, "Save a life, kill a cop," stuffed inside their newspapers.
That's terrible.
I can't believe people would do that.
I personally don't think that that's right, because not every cop is a bad cop.
The consensus with those we spoke with today was that the flyers go too far. They were found stuffed inside stands along Central near UNM campus, posted on some light poles, even delivered to at least one cop's home.
I don't feel safe with people saying stuff like that because it kind of promotes more violence, and I feel like it's not the right way of going about peace.
The Journal says it's treating this as vandalism of its property. It's had people checking stands today, making sure no more flyers made their way into the paper. Much of the outrage started when officers shot and killed homeless camper James Boyd in the foothills nearly a month ago. And last week, the feds hammered the department for using excessive force. Passionate protesters and supporters have been vocal. But this message.
So they're saying that violence is bad, but yet they want to kill back. It just doesn't make sense.
It's all negativity. It's not the right message to be showing. People should be going about it in a more peaceful way instead of forcing their violent views on other people.
Now, officials at the Journal and police have told us they're not sure who is behind the flyers. The Journal says it's looking into it. And again, the flyers are not affiliated with the newspaper. Back to you.
All right, Gabby, thank you. Police did not want to comment on the case, saying they cannot address specific threats on officers.
Not their normal service revolvers that they use in crowd situations like this. Let's go back to Jonathan. It looks like he's got something there that he wants to tell us about. Jonathan, go ahead.
Tim, we're hearing shots right now. I don't think they're guns. I think that it sounds like pellet guns right now. A lot of people running down the street. We saw another group of students run down this way. We're not sure. Get off me! Tim, I got to send it back to you live. A lot of people here drunk right now, running down the streets. This is a chaotic scene. I got to send it back to you in the studio.
No worries, Jonathan.
We'll find out more. We'll get it back to you.
No worries. We're going to take you back up to Skyfox now as you see two squad cars heading west down 4th. All of you went to the U know that is a very popular place. He's there live right now. Jonathan, set the scene for us. You got officers walking past you.
Tim, look at the riot police right now. They are moving on 13th Avenue, trying to get students out of the streets. Again, after the game, the students inside the bar seem to be leaving in an orderly fashion, but then we started to see people running, shots fired from pellet guns, and now the riot police out here in full force, coming out in teams, building walls right now. Tim, I got to send it back to you in the studio. Every time we turn the camera on, we've just got a lot of idiots getting in our way. So if we have anything new, we'll get it back to you.
Revelers face police dressed in riot gear. WLWT News 5's Brian Hamrick joins us with the fallout. Brian.
Yeah, well, Allison, it started as a party called Stratford Palooza right here on Stratford Place. This whole area was filled. It's an end of the semester party. That's not unusual. What is when it gets so out of hand, people begin to throw bottles at police. It's a party that ends with police.
It was definitely getting intense.
Cell phone images show the riot squad called out to calm the chaos. It all began Saturday night. A large party suddenly began to get out of control just off campus on Stratford Place.
After a while, a bunch of cops showed up, possibly to break it up, and people started throwing beer cans at them.
James also saw it all unravel.
Cops were getting hit with beer cans and bottles, and just everyone was throwing them. There was a good amount of alcohol in the air.
For a house party, I guess it was way too much.
Amia Lagarejos is an exchange student from Spain. She says the entire scene was a shock to her.
They were wearing helmet and I don't know how to call it in English, but something to protect themselves.
The shield.
Yeah. And guns. I don't know. It was really scary.
Police arrested 3, including Ian Ireland from Bright, Indiana. He was in court today, charged with disorderly conduct while intoxicated. For him, the party is over. The fallout is not.
20 police officers in Spain, I've never seen that. Maybe 1 cop or something like that, but not 20. And that's only for riots and things like that.
Now, Ireland was given a $70,000 bond. Police say he actually turned and came at the riot police. Reporting live, Brian Hamrick, WLWT News 5.
Thanks, Brian. And police say they originally showed up at the party on a call to break up a fight. Meanwhile, Ames police have made 3 arrests following riots on the Iowa State campus Tuesday during the university's annual Visha Festival. Police arrested 18-year-old Emily Geisinger and 19-year-old Andrew Herkenhoff late Tuesday. They also arrested 21-year-old Abigail Lee, but Wednesday morning. Police took all 3 into custody on suspicion of disorderly conduct. Riots broke out late Tuesday, seriously hurting one student. University officials have decided to cancel the rest of the week-long celebration. Last night, police were concerned that more violence could develop, but were relieved nothing got out of control. ISU leaders are also trying to decide if this Visha festival will end altogether. Visha has been an annual tradition on the Iowa State campus. It started in 1922.
First, what started out as a bunch of college kids having a good time quickly got out of control today. Kalamazoo public safety officers originally called out to the area of Lafayette and Redwood streets near the campus of Western Michigan University at about 2 o'clock this afternoon on several disturbance calls. When they arrived on scene, officers found large crowds gathered there for an event known as house crawl, which is when people go from house to house drinking. At first, the crowd was peaceful, but officers say the crowd grew to an estimated 2,000 people, and that's when fights started to break out. And when officers tried to step in and break up the fights, the crowd turned on police, throwing bottles and rocks at the officers. At one point, officers were forced to use tear gas on the crowd in order to get them to leave. Fortunately, there were no reported injuries.
On campus is cleaning up from a night of rowdy celebrations. Unfortunately, some of them got downright violent. School buildings were trashed and students were arrested. Channel 3's Matthew Campbell was out there in the thick of things and joins us now to tell us what he saw. Matthew.
Well, Denise, we do need to keep in mind that more than 10,000 students were partying in the student union and the surrounding areas, and in some cases it did get out of hand. Small riots breaking out in pockets of the campus. Now our cameras, with the help of some eyewitness video, capturing it all.
A wild time on the UConn campus in Storrs last night, students rocking back and forth, taking a light pole down, marking the beginning of the end of celebrations. With 10,000 students crowded in the student union, something had to give. Many, just to get some space, needed to spread out to the outside.
You couldn't even move because everyone was so closely pressed together.
Many students getting a bird's eye view from light poles, those quickly becoming casualties of the celebrations. This YouTube video showing the light pole coming down, then several students picking it up, using it as a battering ram, breaking down the front glass to the university's IT building. And over behind the Hilltop Residence Hall, a car was flipped over. After an hour of celebrations, police breaking it up after this.
I think they were trying to break a light bulb. Someone got hit in the head with the trash can right in front of me.
In all, police arresting 35 people, 20 of them students. The majority of the 10,000 here left peacefully.
You don't need getting hit in the head with a trash can.
When the crowd cleared, the free space around the student union was littered with broken branches, broken glass, random articles of clothing, and even electronics. Matt Zalewski was out looking for a phone that was lost in the fray. Even though he never found it, he tells us the win was much more worth it.
I have insurance on my phone, but the championship, you can't take that away.
Now, a lot of the arrests were for minor offenses like breach of peace, interfering with police. Some were charged with vandalism and inciting a riot, and police are still looking to ID some of those culprits in some of those videos. Denise.
And we begin with a spring break party that erupted into chaos. Police actually had to fire tear gas as violence broke out near UC Santa Barbara. Nearly 40 people have been hospitalized and more than 130 others arrested. ABC's Rena Ninan shows us what happened.
This dramatic video in Santa Barbara shows partygoers versus the police. More than 15,000 people attending Deltopia, the annual unauthorized spring break block party near the University of California, Santa Barbara, turned into an all-out emergency.
Certainly a very volatile, dangerous situation.
Police say the violence erupted on Saturday while they were making an arrest on an assault. The suspect hitting a police officer in the face with a backpack full of large bottles of alcohol. With an officer down, the call for help went out.
A number of units, individuals responded to the scene, and unfortunately that attracted a large crowd.
Things spiraling out of control. The growing crowds causing more law enforcement to respond.
It just sort of erupted into a full-scale civil disturbance.
You can see mattresses burning, street signs demolished, cars damaged. Police using all means necessary to restore order, pepper ball munitions, rubber bullets, and tear gas.